I didn't book the place because it was charming. I booked it because it was cheap, close to where I needed to be, and the listing had that bland, reassuring language people use when they want you to stop asking questions. Private entrance, quiet neighborhood, contactless check-in, and then, tucked in the amenities like an afterthought, full access to home. Full access is a funny phrase. It sounds generous until you realize it can also mean you're responsible for what you find. The host name was Mara. Profile photo, a smiling face in bright outdoor light, the kind of picture that tells you nothing. 5-star reviews that all said the same thing in different fonts. Great communication, very clean, would stay again. No one mentioned the basement. No one ever mentions the basement. The house itself was older than the listing implied. It had been updated, which in reality meant someone had painted over the past and hoped the past would behave. Fresh white walls, modern light fixtures, a keypad deadbolt with a tiny smudge where too many thumbs had pressed too hard. Inside, it smelled like lemon cleaner and something colder underneath. Not rot, not mold, something mineral, like wet stone that had been forced to dry too quickly. There was a binder on the kitchen counter. Most hosts leave a sticky note. Mara left a binder. The front page said, House Information. Under that, a table of contents with tabs, check-in, Wi-Fi, appliances, trash, quiet hours, emergency, and oddly, access. That last tab sat there like a toothache you can't stop tonguing. I should tell you up front, nothing lunged at me. Nothing bled. This wasn't a story where the lights flicker and a shadow appears behind a door. This was slower than that. Administrative. Procedural. The kind of dread that doesn't spike your heart so much as lower your temperature. I had planned to stay 4 nights. I stayed 2. And even now, when someone says the word basement, I don't picture storage boxes or a washer and dryer. I picture a set of rules. That first evening was normal enough. I unpacked, ate something over the sink, scrolled through messages, convinced myself the quiet was restful and not watchful. Outside, the neighborhood settled into its nightly routine. Distant cars, a dog barking twice, and then stopping as if remembered. At around 10, I noticed the door. It was at the end of a short hallway off the living room, painted the same white as the walls, with a knob that didn't match any other knob in the house. Everything else had brushed metal. This one was older brass, tarnished, with a shallow groove around it where fingernails had worried at the paint. A basement door. Of course. In a normal rental, that door is either locked with a clear explanation, owner storage, or it's unlocked and you find holiday decorations and spiders. This one had no explanation at all. I tried the knob lightly, like I was knocking without making a sound. It didn't budge. I leaned closer and noticed a second lock above the knob. A deadbolt, but not the kind you buy at a hardware store. It was a small rectangular plate with a keyhole that looked older than the paint. I went back to the binder. I flipped to access. The tab was thicker than the others, like someone had added pages over time. The first page was titled Basement Access Policy. Not instructions, not information, policy. The text was printed in a formal font, broken into bullet points. Basement access is restricted without prior authorization. Basement door must remain closed at all times. Do not attempt to force entry. In the event of unusual odors, sounds, or water presence, contact host immediately. Do not contact third parties regarding basement access. That last bullet point sat in my mind like a tack. Do not contact third parties. Third parties like who? A plumber? A neighbor? The platform? Or someone official? Below the bullets was a signature line, Property Management. And beneath that, a date that made no sense. It wasn't this year. It wasn't last year. It was dated almost a decade earlier, and the ink looked fresh. I told myself it was leftover from some previous arrangement. A property manager who used to handle the place. A host who copied and pasted something dramatic because they thought it sounded professional. But the binder didn't feel dramatic. It felt careful. I closed it and decided I didn't need the basement. I wasn't here to explore. I was here to sleep, work, and leave. That was log entry 1, if you want to call it that. The moment I noticed the basement wasn't just a basement, it was a controlled area. And I told myself that was fine. That night, I slept poorly. Not because of noises there weren't any, but because the house had that particular stillness that makes you feel like you're the loudest living thing inside it. Each time I rolled over, the sheets sounded like paper. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up needing water. I walked barefoot to the kitchen. The floor was cold in a way that didn't match the thermostat. When I passed the hallway, I stopped. The basement door was exactly where it had been. Closed, locked. But the air around it was different. Cooler, like the house had an internal draft that only existed in that one spot. I stood there and listened, the way people listen to a refrigerator at night, trying to decide if the hum means it's working or failing. At first, nothing. Then, very softly, something, like a click. Not from the door, from behind it. A single, precise click. Like a pen being uncapped. Like a small relay in a machine switching states. I held my breath without meaning to. The air felt pressed. Then it stopped. I went back to bed with my water and told myself, pipes. Old houses talk. They settle. They expand and contract. But the binder had included sounds in its list of possible issues. Sounds, odors, water. Contact host immediately. Do not contact third parties. In the morning, I worked at the dining table. Sunlight made everything look harmless. Dust motes drifted like slow snow. The kitchen smelled only like coffee. By noon, I had almost convinced myself the policy was just a host being weird. Then I noticed the vent. It was on the baseboard near the hallway. One of those old metal grates painted over too many times. In a house that had been updated, it didn't match. It looked like it belonged to a different era. And it wasn't just a vent. It had a tiny white sticker on it, half peeled. A barcode. I crouched and leaned closer. The barcode sticker had tiny printed text above it, faded but still readable if you squinted. Intake, do not block. Intake, like HVAC intake, like airflow, or like something else. I reached out and touched the grate. It was colder than the surrounding wall. When I pulled my hand back, my fingertips smelled faintly metallic, not blood, not rust, more like wet coins. I went back to the binder. I read the emergency section. It was normal at first, fire extinguisher under the sink, first aid kit in the pantry. Then a page titled Water Event Procedure. Not leak, not flood, water event. The steps were rigid. Do not enter basement. Shut off water at main valve location, behind laundry access panel. Contact host. Do not contact municipal services unless directed. Document affected areas with photos. Await further instruction. Again, do not contact municipal services unless directed. It wasn't the wording itself. It was the consistency, the way it treated normal household issues, like reportable incidents in a system. The laundry access panel was in a closet off the kitchen. When I opened it, I expected to see pipes and a shutoff valve. I did see pipes, but I also saw something taped to the inside of the door. A laminated sheet, yellowed at the edges, with a seal at the top, some kind of city emblem. The heading read, Notice of Compliance Limited Access Area. Below it, dense text I didn't fully understand. It referenced inspections, remediation, containment protocols. There was an address on it, this address. And at the bottom, a stamp and a signature line. The date was the same as the basement access policy, almost a decade earlier. Except, this didn't look freshly printed. This looked like something that had lived through years of humidity and forgotten closets. I took a photo. I didn't know why. Maybe because some part of me wanted proof that I wasn't imagining the tone of the place. Then I noticed a second sheet behind it, partially obscured. I pulled the laminated notice aside and found a smaller paper, folded into quarters and taped flat. It was handwritten, not in a frantic way, in a neat, careful hand, like someone writing to be understood later. It said, if you're reading this, you're in the kitchen closet. Don't open the basement door. Don't call the host first. Call anyone else. No name, no date, just that. My mouth went dry in that slow, cold way where you realize you're suddenly standing in a story you didn't agree to be in. I reread it 3 times. The words didn't change. The meaning did. Don't call the host first. Which implies people call the host and something happens that makes them wish they hadn't. Call anyone else. Anyone else. A neighbor. A friend. The platform. Municipal services. The police. Third parties. The binder said, do not contact third parties regarding basement access. The note said, call anyone else. Those two instructions existed in the same house, taped within arm's reach of each other, like opposing policies written by different departments that never spoke. That was log entry 2, the discovery that someone had tried to warn the next person, and the warning directly contradicted the official tone of the home. That was log entry 2, and it changed the way I heard the quiet. I didn't leave right then. I told myself I should. I told myself that if I was smart, I'd pack my bag and walk out and never look back. But there's something about contradictions that makes you want to resolve them. A procedural itch, a need to know which instruction is the real one. I messaged Mara through the platform, keeping it casual. Hey, quick question. Are guests allowed in the basement? I saw some access notes in the binder. She replied fast, almost instantly. Hi, thanks for reaching out. Basement is not part of the rental and must remain closed. There's nothing down there for guests. Everything you need is upstairs. There it was. Friendly. Definitive. No mention of the municipal notice. No mention of policy. No mention of the fact that the binder had a whole tab devoted to it. I asked, just curious, why does the binder mention inspections and water procedures? Her reply took longer. Then, old paperwork from before we renovated. Please don't worry. The house is safe and compliant. Safe and compliant. That phrase matched the notice. Not a coincidence. A vocabulary. I stared at her message. I could have dropped it. I could have accepted old paperwork and moved on. Instead, I asked one more question because I couldn't help it. Okay, one more thing. There's a handwritten note taped inside the water valve closet. Did you know it was there? This time, she didn't respond right away. Minutes passed. Then, there should not be any handwritten notes in the home. Please do not remove or photograph anything not intended for guests. I felt my face heat up, not with fear, but with that sudden sense of being reprimanded by a system. Do not remove. Do not photograph. I already had a photo. I didn't reply. I set my phone down and tried to return to work, but my attention kept drifting to the hallway. The basement door was down there, quiet, unchanged. But now, it felt like a boundary in a lab. A sealed room. A compartment. Around 5 in the afternoon, I heard the click again. This time I was fully awake, sitting at the table with my laptop open. The click came from the hallway. Precise, singular. I pushed my chair back and walked toward the door, slowly, because some part of me wanted to prove I wasn't scared. The air was cooler. Again, I leaned close, ear near the painted wood. Nothing. Then a second sound, faint, like a soft scrape, not continuous, more like something shifting, repositioning. I backed away. I shouldn't have, but I did it anyway. I went to the closet and looked at the water valve panel again. The notice. The handwritten warning. Call anyone else. My mind did that thing it does when it's trying to be rational. Maybe the note was from a previous tenant who was paranoid. Maybe the municipal notice was for something minor: radon, asbestos, mold remediation. Maybe the limited access area was just old insulation. But the binder's insistence on not contacting third parties was the part I couldn't smooth over. Because that wasn't about safety. That was about control. I decided at that point to make my own third-party contact quietly, without turning it into a scene. I didn't call the police. I didn't call city services. I called the platform support line and asked a neutral question. Is it normal for an Airbnb to have restricted areas with municipal compliance notices on site? The person on the line was polite and slightly confused. They asked for the listing number. They asked what I meant by compliance notices. I kept it general. There's paperwork in the home referencing inspections and restricted access. The host is insisting I shouldn't photograph anything. There was a pause. Then the agent said, "If you feel unsafe, we can help you relocate." Relocate. Not investigate. Systems don't like mysteries. They like solutions that close tickets. I told them I wasn't sure I felt unsafe yet. I said I just wanted to know if that was normal. They said they'd make a note and encouraged me to communicate with the host. Communicate with the host. Call the host first. I thanked them and ended the call. My hands felt cold. That evening, the house got quieter. Not in a normal way, more like it was holding its breath. The heating kicked on, but the hallway stayed colder. I ate standing up. I watched a show with the volume low, not because I was trying to listen for sounds, but because I didn't want to feel like I was drowning out the house. At around midnight, I went to lock the front door. The keypad deadbolt beeped softly, and that's when I noticed the second set of keys. They weren't on the counter. They weren't in the binder. They were hanging on a hook inside the coat closet by the entry. I hadn't opened that closet before. I didn't need coats, but there they were. A small ring with 3 keys and a plastic tag. The tag had a number printed on it in black. Not basement, not storage, just a number. Like a unit, like an evidence bag. I took the keys down and turned them in my hand. One was a standard door key. One looked like a padlock key. The third was old, with a square head and teeth that looked handmade. My stomach did a slow drop. I should tell you what a normal person would do here. A normal person would put the keys back, pack, leave, and send a message. I wasn't normal in that moment. I was tired, irritated, and if I'm honest, curious, in a way that now feels stupid. I held the keys and walked toward the basement door. The brass knob looked dull in the dim light. The deadbolt plate above it was waiting. I didn't insert the key. I didn't even touch the lock. I just stood there and listened. And from behind the door, very softly, like a person trying not to be heard, I heard breathing. Not pipes, not settling, breathing. Slow, measured, as if someone was standing on the other side doing exactly what I was doing. I stepped back so fast my heel caught the edge of the hallway rug. My heart didn't explode into panic. It tightened, locked. I went straight to the living room, grabbed my phone, and opened the camera. I didn't want to call Mara. I didn't want to call support. I didn't want to be told to communicate with the host. I wanted proof. I set my phone on the console table at the end of the hallway, angled toward the basement door. The camera was recording. The screen showed the white door, the brass knob, and the strip of shadow beneath it. Then I went back to the couch and sat, pretending I wasn't watching. Minutes passed. The house made its normal small sounds, the fridge cycling, a faint creak somewhere deeper in the structure. Then, the shadow under the basement door shifted. Just slightly, like someone's foot moved closer to the gap. I sat up. My skin prickled. The doorknob didn't turn. The lock didn't click. But the air in the hallway changed again, a subtle pressure that made the hair on my arms lift. And then, in the recording, you can hear it, a soft tap, not on the door itself, on the floor beneath it. Tap, tap, like a knuckle on wood, like someone signaling through a wall. I stood up. I couldn't help it. My voice came out quieter than I intended. Hello? Silence. I took one step into the hallway. The phone kept recording. I said, "If you're down there, I'm calling someone." The words felt absurd the moment I said them, because who was I threatening? A stranger in a basement? The host? The house? Silence. Then, from behind the door, the same precise click, and this time, the deadbolt plate moved. Not unlocked, but moved, as if pressure had been applied from the other side, testing it, confirming it held. My mouth went numb. I grabbed my phone and stopped recording. I didn't watch it back yet. I didn't want to see what I already knew. I walked to the entry, put my shoes on, and started packing my bag without turning on extra lights. My movements felt like a compliance procedure. Gather essentials, minimize time, do not engage. Halfway through packing, my phone buzzed. A message from Mara. "Are you okay?" The hallway motion sensor went off. "Please do not loiter near restricted access areas." Motion sensor. Of course, there was a motion sensor. I stared at the message until the words blurred. It wasn't just that she knew. It was that she knew immediately. Like the basement door wasn't just a door. Like it was a monitored boundary in a system that expected breaches. I didn't reply. I finished packing. As I pulled my suitcase toward the front door, the house did something small and final. The hallway light on a motion sensor I hadn't noticed before clicked on by itself, bathing the basement door in a pale, clinical glow. And in that light, I saw something I hadn't seen earlier. 3 shallow scratches on the lower part of the door, near the floor. Not random gouges, parallel lines, evenly spaced, as if someone had dragged something rigid upward. The scratches were old, painted over, but the paint had settled into them differently, leaving a faint relief. Like tally marks. I left. I drove to a 24-hour diner and sat in a booth under harsh lighting, ordered coffee I didn't want, and watched the street through a smeared window like it was safer to be observed in public than private. In the booth, I watched the video, the tap, the shadow shift, the way my hello sounded thin, and something else. Right after the second tap, right before the deadbolt plate subtly moved, there was a whisper. Not a voice speaking words, more like a sound a person makes when they're close to a microphone and they exhale through their teeth. A controlled, quiet hiss. On the recording, it sounded like someone trying to say shh without fully forming it. I sent a message to support. I'm leaving. I have video of activity at a restricted basement door. Host is monitoring motion sensors. Please cancel remaining nights and document. They responded with a template apology and offered a relocation credit. They asked if I wanted to file a safety report. I said yes. The next morning, support asked me to upload the video. I did. They thanked me. They said they would review. I asked, should I contact local authorities? They said, we recommend you follow local laws and contact emergency services if you feel in immediate danger. In other words, this is not our department. I checked the listing later. It was still up. Same photos, same language, full access to home. The binder didn't leave a digital footprint. A week after I returned home, I got a final message from Mara. Thank you for your feedback. We have resolved the basement issue. Resolved. Like it was a ticket. Like it was a leak. Like it was never a person, never a breath, never a tap on the floor under a door. I don't know what happened in that basement. I can't tell you that with certainty, and I won't pretend I can. All I can tell you is what I experienced, what I recorded, and what the house's systems did in response. The paperwork, the policy language, the insistence on control, the contradiction between do not contact third parties and call anyone else. And the fact that the host knew, the moment I stood near the basement door, maybe it was mold, maybe it was remediation, maybe it was a liability issue that turned into a bureaucracy issue. Maybe the breathing was something explainable, ducts, airflow, a person working down there. But the tapping, the way the shadow shifted like a foot, the way the deadbolt plate moved as if someone pressed against it from the inside, and the message, please do not loiter near restricted access areas. That wasn't a ghost story. That was an access story. A story about a place that had a rule book for what you were allowed to notice. And if you're asking me what I think really happened, I think the basement was the most honest part of the house. It didn't pretend to be cozy. It didn't promise comfort. It simply held its boundary and tested yours. That was log entry 3, the moment I stopped trying to understand and started trying to leave. That was log entry 3. And the only resolution I got was distance. Even now, when I'm scrolling listings and I see the phrase full access, I don't feel reassured. I feel warned.